Post-game Ole Miss report. I'm Dalen Flowers. So good to see you guys. I know I'm not in my normal setting. Just a lot going on tonight. Had to get back home and had the family in town. So there's a lot of things going on. Before I get going too far, I really want to give my prayers, love, condolences uh, to the Arkansas player Kani Walker. Just a really emotional moment for me and a tragic moment, and it's really one of those moments that you sit back and you're like, this is why you have to appreciate every second. This is why you have to have a great relationship with the Lord. This is why you had to pray, because it's fun to be at a football game, but life is life, and it was a really scary moment. And I prayed in that moment. I'm really glad that he was helped and taken care of. And he was able to, put his fist up in the air as he was being stretched off the field. It was a really great moment to see that, but really just touching an emotional moment. And my prayers are up to him and his family. I hope he's, okay. I've seen reports maybe about a concussion, and, it looked like, he got knee in his head. So it was a scary moment. He wasn't moving. So I hope he's, able to get home to his family and friends soon and is taken care of. Crazy game though. Arkansas Ole Miss for the 63rd time, and it lived up to it. 41-35 Ole Miss win. And it's a game that I did not expect. It's a game that I did not see going in the way that it did. But I can also say this: I'm not surprised how it went. And you may say, Dalen, why are you not surprised? But I think you look at the intangibles. Pre-game I said, okay, Taylen Green, really good quarterback, but last weekend against Arkansas State, didn't play up to his, potential. 2 interceptions, had a couple 3 touchdown passes, but really, it seemed like the rhythm of his game wasn't being found. Boy, did he find it today. 101 rushing yards, one rushing touchdown for Taylen Green. And on the pass, 22 for 35 from passing, 305 yards and 1 touchdown. And you look at it from the Arkansas offense versus the Ole Miss defense perspective, there were some moments where you sit back and like, Ole Miss really could have changed the trajectory of the game early. Missed drop interception by TJ Daugherty, and there were a couple more throughout the game where you really just kind of scratch your head and you're like, how do you drop those interceptions? And as well, I see a lot of the fans on the Ole Miss side kind of just losing their minds a little bit. The defense sucks. Pete Golding, what are you doing? Those games happen. And I also have to remember that you look at the Arkansas side, Taylen Green's second year under Bobby Petrino. And if you know Bobby Petrino, you know he's an offensive genius. And I know sometimes you may look at, the Arkansas teams over the last couple of years and may not understand that even last year. But another year for Taylen Green under Bobby Petrino was important for his development. And he showed it tonight against the Ole Miss Rebels. I thought Bobby Petrino called a heck of a game. I thought, it's kind of in that moment feeling like a Mark Stoops, a Kentucky last year versus Ole Miss. Like he felt like everything was on this game for him, and he called it. And it's unfortunate that for Arkansas that, it felt like one team, whoever made that one mistake was going to lose. And Arkansas made that one mistake, fumbling the ball and giving it up to Ole Miss in the fourth quarter, and Ole Miss ends up winning it. But Bobby Petrino called a heck of a game. I thought the Ole Miss front seven on their defense, didn't really get Taylen Green down when they had the opportunities to. But, he's a mobile guy, long, lengthy, athletic, can move really well, throws on the run really well. And he made plays happen. Even when his, pressure was being forced towards him, he got out of pocket, used his legs, used his arm, and made things happen. He was accurate on a lot of his throws tonight. Some throws, I've believed in Taylen Green for a long time, but some throws that I technically have never seen him still make in real game time moments. So it was crazy to see a lot of that happen. And I thought there were obviously some miscues in the Ole Miss defense, but I also think there were some self-inflicted wounds that could have been changed, and so I think it's for the defensive best to look at the film, grow from the Arkansas game, and move forward, but also understand how do you obtain a quarterback moving forward like Taylen Green, who you may see a few more times like Lenore Sellers and DJ Lagway, who are mobile. And I think the Ole Miss edge has to really be looked at. They have a lot of great talent on the front seven, but the edges seem to be a little bit more slower compared to last year. So that's a key thing for the Ole Miss defense. I think TJ Daugherty had a lot on his plate tonight as well, and you saw him having to be in the secondary, chasing down the guys a lot. The Arkansas offense really made the Ole Miss defense work tonight, and I have no doubt that Pete Golden will get to the film and understand what went wrong for his defense last tonight, and they work on it. On the Ole Miss offensive side of the ball, I didn't expect it. And I said this was going to be a scrappy, maybe a low-scoring game before the game started. I think coming into it, like I said, Taylen Green struggled last weekend. The availability of Austin Simmons was really in doubt up until the game started. And I watched Trinidad Chambliss throughout fall camp a lot. I was very impressed with his mobile ability, but as well his ability to throw and run, his ability to set his shoulders up and make throws, his ability to be really effective in the red zone, and his size. He's not a normal looking quarterback. Man, did he play lights out tonight. I know there were some moments where you kind of question, what was he doing on third downs and some throws, but 21 for 29, 353 yards passing, one touchdown, and 62 yards on the ground and two rushing touchdowns for your first ever start at Ole Miss and an SEC game at that. That's a heck of a start. It really is. And there were some miscues, but that comes with your first game out there at Ole Miss, first game in the SEC. That's gonna happen. But they more, but boy, did Trinidad Chambliss play a game. Read the defense really well against Arkansas, and it's back and forth. Arkansas scored, Ole Miss scored, Arkansas scored. It kept going back and forth, and it was such an entertaining game. And it's like last year you didn't really have that in a way, unless you're an Ole Miss fan, and then the year before that, 2023, 2023, yeah, it was a little bit competitive, but Ole Miss ended up sealing it. And the year before, Arkansas just blows out Ole Miss and Fayetteville, and really haven't had a crazy game like that since 2021 between these two programs. So it was fun to see that. And the Austin Simmons situation is really compacted right now. I really wasn't able to listen to the pressers. I was in a different situation with my family here today, and didn't really get to be in the media box today, and really was able to talk to the players and coaches afterwards. But it's kind of questions why Austin Simmons was put in that situation. You have AJ Maddox there, who's also been here a few years, knows the system, has great intangibles, can also run as well pretty strongly. Put Austin Simmons out there and have him run the ball. It's kind of questionable. You don't want to put your QB1 in that situation, knowing he's already coming off an ankle injury, he's been in the boot all week, and he's visibly limping, as he's coming off the field and throughout the rest of the game on the sideline as well. I think that's something that has to be talked about from the staff of Ole Miss, how to protect your quarterback moving forward. I thought, again, Keywan Lacey looked really, really good. 44 yards rushing, one touchdown. I know that the stats may not sound great, but he provided big moments, broke tackles, did well receiving as well. It has 40 yards receiving. Keywan Lacey's a superstar, and they had the tangibles to bring in Logan Diggs and Damian Taylor a lot throughout the game and give Keywan Lacey a little bit of breathing room. They have the running back room that they want at Ole Miss now. And last year they did not. And the offensive line, I thought did a pretty darn good job tonight. Had a few miscues, but it happens. And, I think another big thing that I really want to bring up off the top of my head is penalties on both sides and even on special teams for Ole Miss. Got to clean them up. They shot themselves in the foot a lot. And some opportunities were able to regain themselves, especially on the offense side of the ball, to still put up points. But on the defense side of the ball, it hurt them. And you can go back and forth and saying whether that was the right call or not. Regardless of it, it happens. And so you had to take that on a grain of salt. But looking at the Ole Miss receivers, Harrison Wallace, again, the guy, 92 yards, one touchdown. I thought Caden Lee had a great game. It was a moment where, you obviously have not seen the Caden Lee that I think Ole Miss fans thought they would see at this point, but got that big play early on, and 75 yards, 3 catches is pretty darn good. Deshaun Trimble had a big catch, touchdown pass on a great route. There's some opportunities for him to go and make some big catches as well that, watching him, I know he's able to make. So just some great plays by the Arkansas secondary tonight. But, I thought there were moments where Lane Kiffin really called and Charlie Watts Jr. really called some great plays. But there are also some times where you kind of scratch your head. I think both teams have a lot of positive things to take away. I know from the Arkansas fan perspective, you lost in a Brazilian fighting effort, and that hurts. But I don't think there's anything to really hold your head down about. You played a pretty strong game. I think defensively, you obviously have things to work on. I said it before. I thought the front seven for Arkansas coming in this game was questionable. Didn't put really much pressure on the Arkansas State and Alabama and them quarterbacks in the previous 2 games. And I thought that was something that had to be talked about. But Trinidad Chambliss did also play a really good game. So both teams have, some negatives and some positives. And you go through walkthroughs Monday, and you have to learn and just get better every week. Ole Miss has Tulane coming up next week in Oxford, and the crowd has to show up again. The crowd was pretty darn strong in Vaught-Hemingway today, and they needed that. They needed that energy, and even the defense that kind of struggled tonight needed to vibe off the energy of the crowd, in which they were able to seal the game on a big fumble recovery. So Ole Miss wins 41-35 in Oxford tonight. What a game. What a weekend of college football. What an SEC game here tonight. And crazy, crazy, crazy. But this is what it's all about. This is what we went so far throughout the summer and in fall camps waiting for these moments, these nights. So super fun to be back again in college football. I'm Taylen Flowers, Ole Miss Post Game Report. See you next time.